does.
All right, now it should be on. Now it should be working.
Nope.
Yeah, now it's working.
Great, let's do it.
It's just a little bit delayed, but it's working.
Yeah, it's always like that. All right, let's begin.
Sure it's not chicken.
Okay, should I respond to him?
Yeah.
What was it?
All right. If I could have all the competitors turn their cameras on so we can do a quick conflict check with all of our judges, that would be great. All right. Judges, do you recognize anyone, any conflicts?
No.
Nope. All right, it looks like we are good. Fantastic. So competitors, if you all could turn your cameras off. So hello, everyone watching. We're so excited to announce that we're going to be starting our first ever final round of our inaugural Tournament of Champions. The two teams that we have here today have risen above state, national, and world champions at the high school mock trial level. So to match the caliber of our competing teams, we have a world-class judging panel of some of the most accomplished figures in the mock trial world. So judges, we're going to introduce you one by one. When we say your name, please turn on your camera. So we're going to start off with Sue Johnson. Sue Johnson. Go ahead, Bennett.
Sue Johnson is the Forensics Program Director at Patrick Henry College, where she oversees the mock trial, moot court, and civic debate programs. She's been a member of the American Mock Trial Association's Board of Directors since 2019. Before joining Patrick Henry, Sue worked as the state coordinator for the Carolina Center for Civic Education, which runs the statewide high school mock trial program in North Carolina. Most recently, Sue coached Patrick Henry's A and B team to 2nd and 7th place finishes at the College National Championship Tournament.
Next up, we have Eric Reutman. Eric is the current head coach of the Duke Mock Trial Program, one of the top 5 programs in the entire nation. As an undergrad, Eric competed for Ohio State, leading his team to multiple American Mock Trial Association national championship appearances. Eric is also a 2-time All-American. That's the highest individual honor available at the collegiate mock trial level. As an undergrad, Eric also competed at Trial by Combat, the premier collegiate one-on-one mock trial tournament that's reserved for only the top 16 college mock trial competitors in the entire nation. Eric also coached the 2020 Trial by Combat national champion, Sonali Mehta, and coached the 2020 American Mock Trial Association one last time national champion team.
Sydney Gaskins. Sydney just graduated from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County with a degree in political science. She attended Franklin High School in Maryland, where she led her team to the state championship final round as a junior. In college, she served as president and captain of UMBC's mock trial team, where she was a 4-time All-American and won 31 total awards, including All-Regional, All-National, and All-American awards 2 years in a row. Sydney is a 3-time competitor at Trial by Combat, where she competed in the final round last year, and she and her team are the reigning national champions.
Next, we have Amanda Mundell. Amanda is a practicing attorney in Washington, D.C. with more than 15 years of experience coaching and competing in mock trial. She's the co-author of Winning Objections, a mock trial guidebook, and she's also a graduate of UCLA's college mock trial program. During her time at UCLA, Amanda earned numerous attorney and witness awards, including an All-American Award, which is the highest individual honor at the collegiate level. In 2011, her team won the American Mock Trial Association National Championship Tournament. After graduation, Amanda attended Harvard Law School, where she co-founded their mock trial program and coached the school's 4 teams in both her 1L and her 2L years. She competed in the prestigious National Trial Competition, where she won awards for Best Advocate, and she won the national phase of the competition in 2016. That was the first time in 40 years that Harvard brought home the title. Since then, she's co-authored several college mock trial cases and has also helped coach UCLA Law School to 3 national championships.
Delois Leaphart is a professor of business law at Northwood University, where she's been teaching since 1992. She's been a member of the Michigan and Indiana bars for almost 40 years, where she was an attorney for Dow Chemical from 1983 to 1993. In 1992, she founded a private law firm where she worked until 2019, and she is the founder, president, and CEO of Adoption Option, a child welfare organization. She's a member of the American Mock Trial Association's Board of Directors, where she serves as the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee and is a member of AMTA's executive board. Professor Leaphart has been the director of North University's mock trial team since its founding in 2004. And under her leadership, Northwood has finished in the top 10 in 6 of its last 9 appearances at the national championship. They've been the division runner-up 3 times. And in 2009, they won the national championship. Delois Leaphart is a member of the AMTA Coaches Hall of Fame.
And finally, if we could get our presiding judge on screen, Justin Bernstein. So last but not least, I'm very happy to introduce our championship round presider, Justin Bernstein. Now, there's a lot we can say about Justin, but to put it simply, if you're a member of the mock trial community, you probably already know his name. Justin is a law professor and the director of trial advocacy at UCLA School of Law. He's coached teams to more than a dozen national championships at the high school, college, and law school levels. Justin is also the director of Gladiator, the high school one-on-one world championship. He's the former president of the American Mock Trial Association and the youngest person ever inducted into its Coaches Hall of Fame. Justin is also the most recent recipient of the American Mock Trial Association's Neil Smith Award for his exemplary contributions and tireless dedication to law-related education and the mock trial community. So we're very excited to present you with such an accomplished panel. And with that, we're ready to go ahead and get started with our championship round. Good luck to both teams. We know that this will be an exciting round to watch. And with that, Justin, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you. All right, can I get appearances, please, from counsel for both parties?
Yes, Your Honor. I guess it's evening now. Good evening. My name's Ethan Marks, and along with my co-counsel, Ms. Audrey Bristol, we'll be representing the state of Alabama today.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the jury. We are Team Ford, representing the defendant, Ms. Alex Albacore, in this case. My name is Peyton Robertson, and I'll be delivering the closing argument for the defense, as well as conducting the cross-examination of Detective Bronstein and the direct examination of Leslie Vita.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Luke Walker, and today I will be portraying Leslie Vita, a forensics investigator.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Elena Phillips, and I will be presenting the opening statement for the defense. I'll also be conducting the cross-examination of Sam Tifton and the direct examination of Alex Albacore.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honor.
My name is Catherine Honeycutt, and I'll be portraying Alex Albacore, the defendant.
Thank you very much. Are there any housekeeping matters we need to take up before we turn to opening statements?
Yes, Your Honor, we have a few. First
Okay,
of all,
let's start with the people. Go ahead.
thank you. First of all, we'd like to invoke Rule 603, calling for the constructive swearing in of all witnesses.
That's granted.
We'd also like to invoke Rule 615, calling for the constructive sequestration of all witnesses, barring party representatives. Today, the state has no party rep.
Since I won't ask at this point whether the defendant is testifying, we'll presume that the other witnesses in the trial are excluded under 615, but the defendant, of course, can remain for her own trial. Anything else, Mr. Marks?
Yes, Your Honor, we'd also like to draw the court's attention to a stipulation, specifically Stipulation 9. Stipulation 9 states Exhibits 1 through 12 have been pre-admitted. Both parties further stipulate that all pre-admitted exhibits may be used or referred to during opening statements and at any point that the record is open. We just wanted to point that out, as our opening attorney will be referencing some of those pre-admitted documents.
That's great. In any document that's admitted into evidence, you don't need permission to share with the jury or publish at any time. You can use that as long as it's your time to speak. If it's your opening, your direct, your cross, your closing, you can do that without further permission from the court.
Great. And Your Honor, we promise this is the last thing, just due to the online nature of today's trial. If at any point you can't see or hear us, feel free to interrupt so we can try to resolve that issue as quickly as possible.
That sounds like a good plan. Mr.
And-
Robertson?
Yes, Your Honor. We just like to call the court's attention to Stipulation 19 that Jimmy Starkis has refused to cooperate with law enforcement and testify in these proceedings today.
Okay,
And with that, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed.
great. We'll hear an opening statement from the government.
Yes, Your Honor.
May I proceed?
You may.
Judge Bernstein, counsel, and may it please the court. The defendant couldn't pay, so he paid the price. This is Jamie Willis. He's a husband and a small business owner right here in Alabama, and for the past decade, he's run a convenience store. But on January 4th, 2019, the defendant, Alex Albacore, broke into the store, held him at gunpoint, and killed him. Today, you're going to learn quite a lot about the defendant. You'll learn that for all of his life, he's been financially supported entirely by her parents, two Wall Street executives. But as the defendant entered college, she began taking risks. She stole weapons from her parents. She was arrested, and in the weeks leading up to this crime, she was placed on academic probation at one of the most expensive universities in the country. Her parents had had enough. The defendant will tell you her parents cut her off cold. To blow off some steam, you'll learn that she decided to travel south with a friend. And because she was out of money, she decided to rob a convenience store. A convenience store she thought was empty. But when she got in there, she learned, as you will, it was not empty. So what did the defendant do? She pulled out her gun and she murdered Jamie Willis. She couldn't pay, so Jamie paid the price. That's why we've charged the defendant with murder and armed robbery. And when we brought those charges, we took on a burden. Today, it's our job to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that 1, the defendant used force to steal from Jamie, and 2, the defendant knowingly killed Jamie. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. And we'll do that by asking you to focus on 3 key facts of this case: the funds, the frenzy, and the forensics. So first, the funds, or rather the defendant's lack of funds. Today, you'll learn that the week before the murder, the defendant's parents cut her off cold. You'll hear that she couldn't afford to pay for food, housing, nothing. The defendant couldn't pay. So next, we'll talk about the frenzy. You'll hear that after being cut off, the defendant panicked. She didn't know what to do. But today, you just won't have to take my word for it. You're going to see a series of statements, voicemails, and documents made by the defendant. You'll hear that she had no idea what to do and that she decided to rob Jamie Willis's convenience store. Jamie, was going to pay the price. So finally, the forensics. Today, you're going to learn that the defendant's gun was found in a dumpster right outside the convenience store. You'll hear that a bullet matching the defendant's gun was found next to the body, and you'll learn that gunshot residue was found on the defendant's clothes in her car and in footprints leading out of the store. Evidence that will prove this defendant killed. She couldn't pay, so he paid the price. But in this country, you can't kill someone and not pay a price. That's why at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Mr. Ethan Marks, will come before you and ask that you find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bristol. We'll hear an opening statement from the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
You may.
And with all due respect to the state, Alex Albacore was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong man. There's a name you didn't hear Ms. Bristol mention in her opening statement. That name, Jimmy Starkis. What if I told you there's a man who was inside the store when shots were fired? What if I told you there's a man with a troubled past? What if I told you there's a man who was and still is keeping secrets? Alex Albacore is a victim of circumstance. She was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong man. Good evening. My name is Elena Phillips, and I, along with my co-counsel, stand here today proud to represent the defendant, Ms. Alex Albacore. Now, we as the defense, we bear no burden of proof. That rests solely with the prosecution. They have to prove to you today, beyond a reasonable doubt, all the elements of their charges of armed robbery and murder. Now, they don't just have to prove that Alex was there, but she was the one who took the cash and pulled the trigger. It's the first week of January 2019, and Alex is a college student attending NYU. She learns that a fellow student, Jimmy Starkis, is headed down south, and she asks to tag along. But it's on that trip she learns that Jimmy is keeping a secret. She learns that he suffers from an addiction. Now, on the morning of January 4th, she's driving through Yazoo City, Alabama, when Jimmy tells her to stop at the sack of sardines. She thinks they're just stopping for food, but Jimmy has other plans. We expect the evidence to suggest that what Jimmy was really doing was meeting up with two people in a 1963 Pontiac Tempest. We believe those people to be Jimmy's dealers. Alex, she goes in the store just to get food when she realizes her wallet is missing. So that's when she shoplifts a can of tuna. And she doesn't deny that fact. But she takes the tuna, she leaves the store, never to come back in. Alex doesn't know what happened in the store that morning. But those few minutes are what are crucial. We expect the evidence to suggest that Jimmy was meeting with his dealers, and when he didn't have the money they wanted, Jamie Willis, an innocent bystander, was accidentally shot and killed in a drug deal gone wrong. Now, throughout today's case, you're going to hear a lot of evidence, but I want you to ask yourselves three questions. Who is Jimmy Starkis? Who were the people in the Pontiac Tempest? And who was in the store when shots were fired? Members of the jury, Alex sympathizes with the victim, Jamie Willis. But because the state didn't do their job, because they didn't look at all the evidence, it's Ms. Albacore that has to pay the price. Just because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong man. Fine for the defense. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Can the state please call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state calls Detective Ellen Bronstein to the stand.
Good
All right,
evening, Your
all-
Honor.
Good evening. All witnesses have already been sworn, so you can proceed. I'm going to have my camera off, so that way the folks watching this courtroom across the country can get a better look at all of you, but I'm here if you have any objections. Go ahead.
Thank you. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Of course, hello, my name is Ellen Bronstein.
What do you do for a living, ma'am?
I'm a detective with the Coldwater County Police Department, or the CCPD.
And how did you get into that line of work?
Well, you know, growing up, I lived in a rougher part of town, and the police were always someone my family could count on to keep our community safe. As I got older, I realized I wanted to play that same role in communities around me. So a little while after graduating college, I joined the police force.
Detective, how did you get involved in this case specifically?
Well, at around 10 a.m. on January 4th of 2019, our station got a report of shots fired at the Sack of Sardines. It's a gas station on the outskirts of Yazoo City. I was designated as the lead investigator.
And what happened when you arrived at the scene?
Well, initially, we thought that there had been a robbery, but upon further inspection, we found a dead body at the scene. That body was identified to be Jamie Willis.
During the course of your investigation, was your team able to conclude a cause of death of Jamie Willis?
Yes, we were. The coroner reported that Jamie died as a result of a gunshot wound to the head.
Did you speak to any eyewitnesses during the course of your investigation?
Yes, another store clerk named Sam Tifton called 911. Ms. Tifton reported seeing two individuals enter the store. She also described hearing a loud bang, and then those same
Objection,
two
Your Honor, hearsay, may I be heard?
Response by the prosecutor?
Yes, Your Honor. We're not using this testimony for the truth of the matter asserted. Sam Tifton will be our next witness to testify. All of those facts can come out for that purpose later. We're using this for the effect that it had on this big investigation. If I may make an offer of proof.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, the witness will testify. We expect them to testify that after hearing these statements from Sam Tifton, they began to look for the car that these individuals were identified for, leading to the arrest of Alex Albacore.
Mr. Robertson?
Yes, Your Honor. In that case, I'd ask for a limiting instruction that these statements only be considered for their effect on Detective Bronstein and not for the truth of the matter asserted.
Okay, the objection is overruled. The request for limiting instructions granted. You can continue.
Detective, would you like me to re-ask that question?
That would be great, thank you.
What did you learn from Sam Tifton?
Well, Sam Tifton described hearing a loud bang, and then those same two individuals that she saw running out of the store and fleeing the scene in a green car with a white convertible top.
Did you ever find those individuals?
Yes, they were stopped a few hours later by Highway Patrol and taken into custody. Their names were Jimmy Starkist and Alex Albacore, the defendant. At that time, we found about $1,000 on the defendant's person.
And did you end up arresting either of those two individuals?
Yes, we ended up arresting the defendant, Alex Albacore, for murder and armed robbery.
And what led you to make that arrest?
Well, there were three main pieces of evidence. The defendant's lack of funds in the weeks leading up to the murder, a series of statements made by the defendant, and forensic evidence found at the crime scene.
Detective, I want to talk about those three pieces of evidence, starting with the defendant's lack of funds. How did you learn about that?
Well, we interviewed the defendant.
During that interview, what did the defendant tell you about her financial status?
She told us that she had an argument with her parents over some trouble she'd gotten into at school, and as a result, her parents cut her off completely.
Let's talk about that second piece of evidence you mentioned, the defendant's statements. Would you recognize a copy of the defendant's voicemail records if I were to show them to you?
Yes, I would.
At this time, we'll be displaying Exhibit 18, constructively beyond the jury's eyeshot. Do you recognize this document?
I do. That's a transcription of a voicemail the defendant left for her partner, Nikki Jones.
Does it appear to be a fair and accurate copy of that document?
Yes, sir, it does.
We move to admit Exhibit 18.
Any objections?
I have no objections pursuant to stipulation 15, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Detective, what stood out to you in this call?
Well, the defendant says that she had just had a huge argument with her parents and that they cut her off completely. They said that they would give her enough money to get through the week and not another penny.
The defendant said she would get enough money to last through the week. Based on the time this voicemail was left, when would that week be up?
Around January 4th, January 5th.
And just to remind the court, when was this murder?
January 4th, sir.
Now, those two statements on the screen, were those the only thing of note you found in this voicemail?
They were not. The defendant also said that she had no idea what to do.
During the course of your investigation, did you learn what the defendant decided to do?
Yes, the defendant told us that she decided to drive down to New Orleans with her friend, Jimmy Starkist, just to get out of town. She said that they had stopped at the Sack of Sardines on the way down from at New York University.
Did she tell you when she got to the Sack of Sardines, ma'am?
She said they arrived at around 9:30, just a few minutes before the murder, according to the coroner's report.
Did she say what kind of car she was driving?
Yes, she was driving a mint green 1964 Buick Skylark. We actually had a photo of her car and she identified it as such.
Did the defendant tell you what she was doing at the Sack of Sardines?
She did. She said that she couldn't find her wallet and that she decided to steal some food.
Did the defendant say whose idea it was to steal that food?
The defendant said that it was her idea and that she told Jimmy to do it.
Did she mention anything about a drug deal at the Sack of Sardines, ma'am?
No, sir, not at all.
Detective, let's talk about the third piece of evidence you mentioned, the forensics. What forensic evidence did your team collect?
Well, we analyzed a handgun that was found in the trash can by the store, shoe prints in the store and parking lot, and gunshot residue at a variety of locations.
Let's break that down. You said you found a gun in the trash. What kind of gun was it?
I apologize, sir. It looks like my
We're going to give the witness a chance to get her internet connection fixed. I'm assuming we're going to pause the clock. Oh.
Yes, sorry about that. It looks like my internet cut out for a moment. Are you guys able to see and hear me all right now?
We can see it just fine. We can hear you as well. Are you ready to go?
Ready to go whenever.
Thank you, Detective.
Fantastic. Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, let's just take a step back here. You said you found a gun in the trash. What kind of gun was it?
It was a .22 caliber Smith 1911 handgun.
Do you know whose gun it was?
Yes, when I showed the defendant a photo of it, she admitted it was her gun.
Was there any evidence that this gun was used in the murder?
There was, yes. We found a .22 caliber bullet on the floor next to the victim's body, and that matches with the defendant's .22 caliber gun.
Did the defendant admit to bringing that gun into the store?
No, sir. She said that she had a feeling it would make things worse and that she didn't want the police to get a bad idea. So she put it in the trash can.
Now, did your team conduct any tests on that gun?
Yes, we tested for fingerprints.
Did you find any matches?
Yes, we only found one match and it was to the defendant.
Did you find any matches to Jimmy Starkist?
No, we did not.
And you said earlier when we were discussing the car, that you stopped that car. Did you find anything that could be used to wipe down or sanitize a gun in that car?
No, sir, nothing of the sort.
Did you find Jimmy Starkist with any gloves or something like that?
We did not.
Now, you also mentioned there were shoe prints at the crime scene. Where exactly were those shoe prints?
Yes, I actually prepared a diagram to show you where they were. I believe it was labeled Exhibit 12B.
Your Honor, at this time, we'll be displaying Exhibit 12B. Detective, what are we looking at here?
Well, this is a map of the Sack of Sardines store and parking lot, as well as the surrounding area. As you can see, there was a trail of footprints leading from the front counter of the store where the body was found, and tire tracks by the exit.
Detective, it says GSR footprint trail. For those of us that aren't detectives, could you just explain what GSR means?
Sure. GSR stands for gunshot residue.
Essentially, when a gun is fired, tiny metal particles are released from the weapon onto the skin and clothing of the individual who fired that weapon.
Was there GSR in those shoe prints?
Yes, we found a mixture of gunshot residue and motor oil.
Was that the only place you found gunshot residue during your investigation?
It was not. Once we were able to search the defendant's car and belongings, we also found GSR on the defendant's shoes, the driver's side door of their car, and on a purple NYU sweatshirt found in that car.
Detective, we've talked about the defendant's statements and we've talked about the forensic evidence. Was that all you reviewed?
No, sir, it was not. We also acquired the defendant's search history from his cell phone. Her cell phone, rather.
Would you recognize a screenshot of that search history if I were to show it to you?
Of course.
Your Honor will now be sharing Exhibit 21 constructively outside the jury's view. Detective, does that appear to be a fair and accurate copy of that document?
It does.
Did the defendant admit to searching those things to you?
Yes, she did.
We move to admit Exhibit 21.
Any objection?
I have no objections pursuant to stipulation 21, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Did you find anything of note in this search history?
Yes, we did. The defendant searched quite a lot about the Alabama Criminal Code. Specifically, she searched about crime sentences, how to survive in Alabama prison, and the death penalty in Alabama.
Detective, to your knowledge, do you get the death penalty in Alabama for stealing food from a convenience store?
No, sir, you do not.
Thanks for coming in today, Detective. I'm sure when you were training a while ago, you didn't expect to be on a Zoom trial, so we appreciate you coming in today. Nothing further at this time.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Detective.
Good evening, sir.
I'd like to start off by talking about the suspects in this case. Now, you are familiar with the area around the Sack of Sardines store, right?
Of course.
Now, are you aware of any suspicious drug activity there?
No, sir, not at all.
Let's talk about that then. Your Honor, permission to display what has been marked as Exhibits 20A and B on the screen?
These are not yet in evidence, right?
No, Your Honor, this will be constructively outside the presence of the jury.
That's fine.
Now, Detective, this is a series of texts sent from Jamie Willis's phone.
That's correct, sir.
It's a fair and accurate copy.
Looks to be, yes.
Your Honor, I move to enter these texts into evidence as Exhibits 20A and B.
Mr. Marks?
Yes, Your Honor. We would object as to hearsay.
Okay, let's hear a response from Mr. Robertson.
Yes, Your Honor. These fall under hearsay exception 8031, a present sense impression. Now, Mr. Willis is describing what he is seeing outside a store while he is observing it.
Response on those grounds, Your Honor?
Let me take a look at what these say.
Of course.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, if we could direct the court's attention to the third blue message in 20A. It says they've been there for a few hours. We also see on the fourth blue message in 20B, right at the bottom, it's been hours. This car has been sitting there. Clearly, this stimulus for him, in order to have a present sense impression, a sensory response to this, it would have to be immediately after or during the experience of the stimulus. Clearly, in this document, we see this car has been sitting there for hours. Further, Your Honor, in order for it to qualify under 8031, it would have to be an impression of a sensory thing. This witness is, or this victim in this statement is talking about his impressions, his thoughts, his feelings about this. He's not actually giving a present sense impression, and therefore 8031 does not apply.
Mr. Marks, given the nature of this case and the inspiration for the case, I can only say to you that's a lucid, intelligent, well thought out objection. It's overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, Detective, these first set of texts were sent 3 days before Mr. Willis was killed.
That's correct, on January 1st.
Now, Mr. Willis reports being concerned.
That's true.
Now, he says there's someone in the parking lot.
He does.
In a green car.
That's correct.
sitting there for hours.
That's correct as well, sir.
And then on January 3rd, the day before he was killed, this same car comes back.
That's true.
And just like before, there's someone in the parking lot,
On January 3rd, yes.
sitting there for hours.
That's what he reported.
And let the record reflect, I'm displaying what has been entered as Exhibit 3 on the screen. Now, Detective, I'm now showing you a 1963 Pontiac Tempest. Did you ask any eyewitnesses if they had seen this car in the area before?
No, sir, we did not.
Did you run a report to see who might be registered owners of this make and model of car?
No, sir, we had no indication that this 1963 Pontiac Tempest was at the parking lot or the sack of sardines on the morning of the crime.
So just to be clear, Detective, you didn't run any reports on this specific car.
That's correct.
And now while we're on the subject of your investigation, now you mentioned tire impressions earlier. You don't have any special training in tire mark identification.
Yeah, I do not. That's why we recruit experts in the field for our investigations.
And you didn't take any measurements of the tire tracks.
Not personally, no.
And another thing, you claim Miss Albacore stole money from the cash register,
That's true.
but you didn't find her fingerprints on that register, did you?
We did not.
And Detective, are you aware of a substance called luminol?
I am.
Could you tell the jury what that is?
Yes, sir, that's a substance we often use to test for fingerprints.
Well, actually, Detective, you use luminol to test for trace amounts of blood, not fingerprints.
Apologies, sir. That's correct, for DNA.
For blood, actually, Detective, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. And now you didn't find any trace amounts of blood in Miss Albacore's car,
No, sir, we did not.
on her shoes,
That's correct.
or on her clothes.
We did not.
And now let's talk about the gun. Do you recall the location of the dumpster where you found the handgun?
It was a little bit outside the store.
Do you recall what location of the parking lot that was in?
I could point it out on a map, sir. I couldn't tell you directionally.
All right. Well, it was in the southwest corner. Would that be right?
That's correct, sir.
All right. Now, you interviewed Sam Tifton, correct?
I did.
And now it's your theory that the shooter, that gun found in the dumpster, that was the murder weapon, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Now it's your theory that the shooter fired the gun, threw it in the dumpster, and then fled the scene, right?
That's correct, sir.
Now, in your interview with Sam Tifton, she told you that she saw two people running from the store
That's true.
straight to the car.
She said she saw them running out of the store. Yes, sir.
To the car, correct?
Yes.
But she never told you she saw anyone running to the dumpster.
No, sir. The trash can we found it in was pretty much right outside the front of the store.
But bring it back to my question, she never told you she saw anyone run to a dumpster.
That's correct.
And now you developed a diagram of the GSR trail.
We did.
Let the record reflect I'm displaying what has been entered as Exhibit 12B. Now, Detective, this is the path you contend the killers took.
Approximately.
It goes from the store
It does.
straight to the car.
That's correct, sir. We drew a line between the point where they started and the point where they finished. It just so happened to be straight.
And this is like the path you found the footprints going on.
Approximately, sir.
So wait a minute here. This trail doesn't go to the southwest corner, the location of what you claim to be the murder weapon.
That's correct, sir. It does not.
And now, Detective, I want to be clear on something. You found the body in the back of the store, right?
A little ways away from the cash register. Yes, sir.
But it was in the back of the store, correct?
By the cash register, yes.
Are you telling us the cash register is in the back of the store?
Right by the checkout counter.
But again, you found the body in the back of the store, not at the front of the store.
That's correct, sir.
Now, thank you, Detective. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. Marks, anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective, I want to talk about the car we just discussed a few moments ago with Mr. Robertson. Detective, in those text messages, Did Jamie Willis talk about anyone getting out of that car?
No, sir, he did not.
Did he talk about any suspected drug deals?
He did not.
Did he talk about someone else coming up to that car?
He never did.
Did he ever say he was afraid for his life?
He did not.
Nothing further.
Thank you, counsel. The witness may step down. Is the state prepared to call its next witness?
Yes, Your Honor, if you'll just give us a moment to readjust our cameras, that'd be great.
Take your time.
At this time, the state will now be calling Sam Tifton to the stand.
You may proceed.
Evening, could you please introduce yourself to the court?
Hi there, my name's Samantha.
And Miss Tifton, what do you do for a living?
I run a grocery store called Tifton's Grocers.
And how did you get into this line of work?
Well, every Saturday when I was growing up, I went to the grocery store with my meemaw. If I was good that week, she'd give me a nickel and I'd buy a candy bar or something. It was really sweet. You know, I loved it. Anyhow, right before she passed away, she told me I had to do one thing, go on The Price is Right, and so I did. And I used the money I won on the show to open up my own grocery store.
And Miss, where's your store located?
It's over in Yazoo, right next to the sack of sardines.
And do you know the owner of the sack of sardines?
Yeah, sure. His name's Jamie Willis. I really looked up to him.
And why is that?
Well, he's taller than me.
Well, ma'am, what were your interactions with Mr. Willis like?
Well, they weren't great. I mean, for about 8 years, I had this lot all to myself, but then out of the blue, Jamie Willis comes, buys the lot next to me, and opens up a competing grocery store. The guy claims it's a coincidence, but I don't buy it.
Well, miss, why are you here today?
Well, I witnessed Jamie's killer go into the store. I heard the gunshots, saw him flee, and everything. I want to make sure Jamie gets justice. It's the least I can do.
Well, miss, let's talk about that murder. When was it?
It happened at around 9:30, 8 o'clock, or 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning on January 4th, 2019.
And where were you on January 4th?
Well, I was in my store, like always. I was watching a movie on the iPhone my grandson brought me, and it was getting to my favorite part when a green car with a white convertible top pulled in.
Would you recognize a photograph of that car if I were to show it to you?
Yeah, sure.
Your Honor, at this time, we will be displaying what's been admitted as Exhibit 8. Ma'am, do you recognize this?
Yes, I was shown this before coming here today.
And does this look like the car you saw pull in on January 4th, 2019?
It does, yes, ma'am.
And now I want to show you another photo. Your Honor, at this time, we will be displaying what's been admitted as Exhibit 3. Have you seen this car before?
Yeah, it's been in the sack of sardines parking lot from time to time.
And did you see this car at any point on January 4th, 2019?
I'm sorry, it appears my internet connection's sort of going out.
I can hear you okay, ma'am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, I'll re-ask the question. Did you see the car on the screen at any point on January 4th, 2019?
That car? No, I didn't see that car. I just saw the green one that you showed me earlier.
And were you able to see the people inside of that car?
Yeah, they got out of the car pretty soon after they parked it. They caught my attention pretty quickly.
Well, why is that?
Well, one of them was wearing a purple sweatshirt from some fancy college, New York University. So I thought that they probably weren't from around here.
And did you ever learn the identities of these individuals?
Yes, ma'am. Later on, the police asked me to identify them. The individuals I identified were named Jimmy Starkist and Alex Albacore.
And ma'am, what did these two people do?
Well, at first, they were just talking. You know, the one kid goes, "Are you really sure we want to do this?" And then the other one, the one in the purple sweatshirt goes, "You've got to be kidding me. You can't freak out on me now. We're doing this."
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay, may I be heard?
Yes.
Your Honor, these statements made by the person in the purple sweatshirt saying, "You've got to be kidding me, we're doing this," Your Honor, those are out-of-court statements being offered for the truth of the matter asserted in today's case and are inadmissible pursuant to Rule 801.
Response?
Your Honor, these are statements made by the party opponent, therefore should be admissible.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor, we have heard no foundation from this witness that the defendant was in fact wearing a purple sweatshirt on January 4th. Your Honor, I would contend that the foundation for 801 D2A has not yet been laid.
Last word, Ms. Bristol.
We had previously established that Ms. Tifton does now know the identities of the two individuals she saw on the day they were made known after completing that police lineup, and therefore is now aware that the person she saw wearing that purple sweatshirt is Alex Albacore, the party opponent.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
Now, once these two kids got out of the car, what did they do?
Well, like I said, they were just talking at first. And the one kid, not in the sweatshirt, they go, "Are you really sure we want to do this?" And then the one in the purple sweatshirt goes, "You've got to be kidding me. You can't freak out on me now. We're doing this." And then she just started yelling about money.
What do you mean by that?
Well, she's all like, "You know how bad we need this." And, you know, she's like, "We need money. We need money or we're screwed."
And after that woman in the purple sweatshirt said that, what did she do?
Well, you know, I wasn't too concerned at that point. You know, I didn't think that someone was going to get murdered or nothing. So I just went to the back of the store to do inventory. And that's when I heard something that shook the heavens.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I hear this huge bang, like a firecracker. I thought it might have been a gunshot, but, you know, you don't think you're going to hear something like that every day.
And did you see anyone leave the store after you heard that loud bang?
Well, yeah, this is when I realized something fishy might be going on. Those two kids bolt out of there like a bat out of hell, and I'm thinking something must be going down.
And then where did those kids go?
Well, they ran back to that car. They jumped in the car and just started zooming away. I mean, they went so fast, the tires were smoking on the pavement. They left tracks all over the parking lot.
And did you do anything?
Well, I ran out there and I started yelling. I said, "Get your you-know-what's back here before I beat your you-know-what's you-know-what holes."
And then what did you do after that?
Well, I ran over to the sack of sardines just to make sure everyone was okay. That's when I found them.
I'm sorry, ma'am, could you repeat that?
Yeah, like I was saying, I went over to the sack of sardines to make sure everyone was okay. And then that's when I found Jamie.
Thank you, miss. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, permission to proceed?
You may.
Good evening, Ms. Tifton.
Good evening, ma'am.
I want to start by talking a little bit about your conversations with Detective Bronstein. Now, you were previously interviewed by her, isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Now, she never asked you about any suspicious vehicles in the parking lot prior to January 4th.
No, ma'am, she didn't.
Okay, let the record reflect that I'm now displaying what's been entered into evidence as Exhibit 3. Now, Ms. Tifton, this is a 1963 Pontiac Tempest, isn't that right?
It looks like that is. Yes, ma'am.
And like you said on direct, you've seen this car before.
I've seen it from time to time, but I didn't see it January 4th.
Well, if Detective Bronstein had asked you about that car, you would have said you've seen it in Jamie's parking lot.
Yeah, I would have told her the truth that I'd seen it before, ma'am.
Miss Tifton, you have surveillance cameras, isn't that right?
I do, but you know how technology is nowadays. They don't always work the best.
Well, even when they are working, they don't show you the northeast corner of the parking lot, isn't that right?
No, ma'am, they don't.
Now, Detective Bronstein never asked you for surveillance footage from January 3rd.
No, ma'am, she didn't ask me for that.
And never asked you for surveillance footage from January 1st.
No, ma'am, she didn't say anything like that.
Now, Ms. Tifton, as I understand it, it's your testimony that you saw the defendant twice on January 4th. Is that right?
I saw them in the car and I saw them get out of the store.
Yeah, you saw them going into Jamie's store.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And then you claim you later saw them leaving.
I did see them leaving. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, let's break that down a little bit. Now, the first time you see Miss Albacore, you're inside your store. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
You're behind your cash register.
Yeah, I was behind the cash register.
You see them out your big window out front.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. Now, when they pull in, they're about 50 feet away from you. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Miss Tifton, you'd agree you were a bit distracted that morning, weren't you?
I was watching a movie, like I said earlier, on the iPod my grandson bought me, but yeah, I was a little bit distracted, you could say that.
That's right. You were watching a movie when the defendant comes into the parking lot.
Yes, ma'am, it was playing under the counter.
Okay, so you see them go into Jamie's store, and that's when you go into the back of yours.
Yes, ma'am.
You claim this was around 9:30 a.m.?
Yeah, around 9:30, 10 a.m.
And then you hear a loud bang, isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's when you run out to the front of your store again.
Yeah, I wanted to see what was going on, make sure everything was okay.
And when you look out your window, you see two suspects fleeing, isn't that right?
Yeah, they zoomed out of there.
That's right, they zoomed out of there.
Yes, ma'am, they did.
And when they were running, their backs were to you, isn't that right?
Yeah, they were running out of the store, ma'am.
And you didn't see their faces that second time, did you?
No, ma'am, but I saw their outfits. It was them.
Now I want to talk about this path the suspects took. Now they were running from Jamie's store.
Yes, ma'am, they were coming out of his store.
To a car.
Yes, ma'am.
You didn't see them running to a dumpster.
No, ma'am, they ran to the car and they zoomed away from the parking lot.
You didn't see them run to a dumpster.
No, ma'am, they didn't run to a dumpster or anything like that.
Not at any time did you see these suspects throw away a gun, did you?
I didn't see that. They just ran into the car and they zoomed away.
Now, something my opposing counsel didn't ask you about on direct is that there were actually other people in the store when you went to go check on Jamie. Isn't that right?
I thought that there might have been another person, but I wasn't too sure.
Well, that's what you told the 911 operator, isn't that right?
Yeah, I said I thought that there was someone else in there.
Let the record reflect on displaying a copy of Exhibit 17. Now, Ms. Tifton, this is a transcript of your 911 call, isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am, it appears that it is.
You made this on January 4th
Yes, ma'am.
while you were in Jamie's store,
Yes, ma'am, that's when I called 911.
right after you heard those gunshots. Isn't that right, ma'am?
Once I entered the store and saw Jamie, yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to enter Exhibit 17 into evidence.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 17 is admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Tifton, in this 911 call, you say, I think I saw someone else inside the store. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And then you say they left out the back door.
That's what I thought. Yes, ma'am.
You know, something else my opposing counsel didn't ask you about is where you found Jamie's body. Now, you claim you found Jamie's body behind the front register. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And not in the back of the store.
No, ma'am. When I walked in, I saw Jamie there, lying on the ground by the register.
Miss Tifton, you didn't move Jamie's body, did you?
No, ma'am, I didn't do that.
Thank you, Miss Tifton. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, briefly. Miss Tifton, how many cars did you see in the parking lot on January 4th?
I saw one car.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, the witness may step down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional testimony from the prosecution?
No, Your Honor. At this time, the prosecution will rest its case in chief.
Great. Should we do a 5-minute recess?
Your Honor, that is good with the defense.
With
All right.
us,
We'll make it a real 5-minute recess, not a mock trial 5-minute recess. So we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Are the parties present? Are the parties present and ready to proceed with the defense case in chief?
Prosecution's ready, Your Honor.
Great.
Your Honor, I believe we're just waiting for our witnesses to leave the breakout room and join this main session again.
Great.
Your Honor, it looks like the defense is all here and ready to proceed.
Terrific. Defense, you can call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Ms. Alex Albacore to the stand. Permission to proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Please state your name and spell your last for the court.
Alex Albacore, Albacore. It's Italian.
Where are you from?
I'm from Brooklyn.
What can you tell us about yourself today?
Well, I used to be a student at NYU not too long ago. Of course, my life's kind of on hold right now because of all this.
Sorry, Ms. Albacore.
Oh, no, it's fine. I certainly sympathize with Mr. Willis. I'm just looking forward to all this being over.
Now, we've heard today that you were in Alabama with Mr. Starkis, but how did you know him?
Well, me and Jimmy, we actually used to be friends when we were younger. We kind of drifted apart, but we started talking more when we realized that we were both students at NYU. Of course, I was dating this other guy, Nick, at the time.
How do you end up in Alabama together?
That's a long story. You see, I'd gotten into this huge fight with my parents, and I just wanted to get away. So I find out that Jimmy, he's from down south. So I find out that he's going down there to visit a couple buddies, and I asked if I could tag along.
At that point, how well did you know Mr. Starkis?
Truthfully, not as well as I thought I did.
Why do you say that?
Well, you see, on the way to Alabama, we had stopped at this campground. And that's when I found out that Jimmy had a drug problem. So, anyways, I'm listening
Objection.
to...
Lack of foundation. Objection, Your Honor.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, this is rationally based on the witness's perception. She was with Jimmy at this campground, and she was able to observe his use of drugs. And Your Honor, this is based on rationally based on her perception pursuant to Rule 701.
Response on those grounds, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Our objection wasn't to lack of personal knowledge. It was to lack of foundation. What the witness testified to was that Jimmy not only used drugs, but had a drug addiction. Either he had to tell her this or she had to witness certain things. We'd ask that the specific foundation for how she learned about this drug addiction, as she just said, be entered onto the record before testifying to that conclusion.
The objection sustained.
Yes, Your
Move to
Honor.
strike defending testimony.
That motion is granted.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Albacore, how did you find out about this drug addiction?
Well, I was listening to Jimmy on the phone, and look, I don't know all the details, but he was talking to his buddy about meeting up and buying drugs.
How do you,
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation as to how this witness knows he was on the phone with a buddy.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. This witness testified that she observed Jimmy on a phone call with this person. And Your Honor, that way, Your Honor, this witness does have personal knowledge as to that, since she testified she was with Jimmy when that phone call was made.
Response?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I can certainly watch someone on a telephone call. That doesn't mean I can tell you who they're talking to. Either she was told this or she saw this. We'd ask that that foundation be laid in case it's inadmissible so we have the chance to object to it.
So I'm most concerned with the testimony regarding the fact that this is a drug addiction as opposed to just mere drug use. Ms. Phillips, what foundation are you able to lay that this witness knows the person we're talking about here has a drug addiction or a drug problem?
Yes, Your Honor, if I may proffer.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, this witness will go on to say that she saw Mr. Sarkis use drugs on this trip. And Your Honor, that is how this witness learned about this drug addiction.
Response on those grounds?
Just a minute. Do you have any additional evidence that it's an addiction, not just an instance or two of drug use?
Yes, Your Honor, she will also go on to testify that she heard about this phone call and about she was there for a possible drug meetup, Your Honor, and this will be rationally based on her perception that Jimmy did suffer from an addiction.
In what statements did this witness allegedly hear on the phone call that would indicate it's an addiction?
Your Honor, that she was going to meet up with dealers, that Jimmy Starkis was going to meet up with his dealers.
Okay, I'm going to allow testimony about what the witness saw and observed and heard. Based on the proffers, I'm not going to permit testimony that the person had an addiction.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can proceed.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm gonna start, or Ms. Albacore, what did you see Jimmy do at the campground that night?
Well, Jimmy and I, we hadn't really talked much that night, but I saw him, he had this needle and he stuck it in his arm.
How did you react to that?
Well, I was just standing there. I didn't know what to do, but Jimmy, he turned around and he saw me and he just flips out. I didn't know what I had done. I didn't know what I was going to do.
So what did you do at that point?
I just wanted to go back to Brooklyn. Jimmy, he wasn't who I thought he was, and I was honestly regretting that I ever even met the guy.
Now I want to walk through the events of January 4th. What was the first thing you remember that morning?
Well, I remember waking up at the campground. I had slept in the tent and Jimmy, he had slept in the car.
What time did you leave that morning?
I'm not sure what the exact time was, but it had to be around daybreak.
Did you stop at the sack of sardines?
Yeah, we did. I do remember that was around 9:30.
Why did you stop there?
Jimmy, he told me to pull in so that I could get food and he could meet up with somebody.
Tell me what you saw.
Well, when I pull in, I look over at the other side of the parking lot, and what strikes me, well, I drive a 1964 Buick Skylark, and the car in the parking lot, it looked a lot like mine. Not exactly, but enough that it made me take a second look.
Let the record reflect that I'm now showing exhibits 8 and 3 on the screen. Miss Albacore, what are these?
Well, the one on the left, that's my car, the 1964 Buick Skylark, and the one on the right, that was the other car that I saw in the parking lot.
Let the record reflect I'm now showing a copy of exhibit 12C. Miss Albacore, where were you parked that morning?
I was parked down there kind of at the south end of the parking lot.
And where was this other car?
Up here.
Oh, once you parked the car, what do you do?
Well, I looked over at the other car and I saw that there was a guy in the car and he kind of waved at Jimmy and he pointed at the store.
Did you ever go into the store?
Yeah, I did. And I headed over to the canned tuna section, or the canned food section. I picked up a can of tuna and I put it in my pocket. And that's when I realized that I'd lost my wallet.
Were you ever able to find your wallet?
No, I wasn't. I went out to my car and I looked everywhere for it. But the best I can figure is that I lost it at the campground.
What do you do next?
Well, I had to go tell Jimmy that we didn't have any money.
How did he react to that?
Honestly, the only thing that was going through my head was whether or not he was going to freak out on me again like he did at the campground. Jimmy, he had been getting irritated at the littlest things on this trip, and I was just scared.
As to improper character evidence may be heard.
Yes.
Your Honor, the witness just testified that Jimmy had been acting irritated, that he'd been getting frustrated doing all of those different actions, Your Honor. Counsel is seeking to use this character trait of irritation, frustration, anger, something to that effect, to prove propensity, that it was more likely for Jimmy to act out in anger or frustration at this crime scene. And that's improper under Rule 404.
Your Honor,
Ms.
may I
Phillips?
be heard?
Yes, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, we're not offering this to show propensity under Rule 404A. Your Honor, we're not offering this to show that on one occasion Mr. Sarkis was acting irritable, therefore he'd more likely act like that on another occasion. Your Honor, this testimony is simply the witness describing how Jimmy reacted. And Your Honor, we're not offering that for propensity.
Response?
Ms. Phillips, what's the relationship in time from one instance to the other, from when the witness observed somebody being irritated to when the alleged murder took place?
Your Honor, I believe it would be just, Your Honor, this would have been just a few minutes, Your Honor, but we're not offering this to show that Jimmy Sarkis was irritable when Mr. Willis was killed.
Response?
Okay, go ahead.
Your Honor, the testimony that we were objecting to specifically, not only did it include this irritability at the food store, but what the witness said was Jimmy had been acting irritated, frustrated during this weekend leading up to the crime. Clearly, they're seeking to establish a pattern of behavior, a pattern of irritability to make it more likely that he acted in conformity therewith that trait. That's improper character evidence under 404.
Okay, I'm going to allow the testimony.
Yes, Your Honor. What were you saying, Ms. Albacore?
Just that, Jimmy, since he had been getting mad about everything else, when I told him that we didn't have any money, yeah, he got mad.
So what did you do?
Speculation. The witness just testified that Jimmy was mad. Your Honor, she can certainly testify to what Jimmy did, but to testify about the mental state of Jimmy, that goes beyond her rationally based perceptions. We'd ask that they just stick to that.
Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Albacore, what did you do at that point?
Well, I'm not proud of this, but that's whenever I took the canned tuna and I just walked out of the store.
While you were in the store, did you ever see Mr. Willis?
No, it was odd. I wasn't really looking for him. I was trying my best not to be seen, but I never saw him. I guess he had to have been in there, though.
To your knowledge, who was in the store?
Well, me and Jimmy, obviously, but I also saw this other guy kind of pacing around the liquor section.
Do you know at all if that other person was connected to the green car?
I mean, I'm not sure, but he was the only other guy in the store, and that was the only other car in the parking lot, so it only makes sense.
Did you ever see Jimmy interacting with this other guy?
Not exactly. Well, Jimmy, he kind of motioned for me to hurry up and get out of here, and then I see him walking towards the other guy.
You mentioned Jimmy motioned to you, so after that happened, what did you do?
I left.
Once you left the store, what happened?
Well, I walk out and then I hear this loud bang, and I didn't know what it was at the time, but hindsight, it had to have been the gunshot. Anyways, that's when I see Jimmy come out of the store.
One thing the prosecution mentioned earlier was a gun. Miss Albacore, do you own a gun?
I do.
What happened with that gun?
Well, I just kind of got to thinking that I didn't want to be around it anymore, and so I threw it in the dumpster. I had seen Jimmy messing with it a couple times. I just I didn't want to be around it.
To your knowledge, could that have been the gun used on Mr. Willis?
Oh, no, it never even went inside the store.
Now, another point the prosecution addressed was the money. When you were arrested, how much money did you have on you?
I had a little over $900.
How is it that you had money then, but not when you were at the sack of sardines?
Well, me and Jimmy, we were strapped for cash, and, he knew that I had this expensive necklace, and he made me give it to him to pawn it so that he could get some money. I really didn't want to give him that necklace because, Nick had given it to me. But I was just too scared of what Jimmy might do if I didn't.
Miss Albacore, did you kill Jamie Willis?
No, of course not.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. Marks, proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Albacore. My name's Ethan Marks. Just going to be asking you a few questions today.
All right.
Ms. Albacore, I want to start by talking about something you just told Miss Phillips. I wrote it down. You said you had seen Jimmy messing with your gun throughout this weekend. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had seen him messing with it a couple times.
And by messing it, you mean that he was touching it, right?
Yeah.
Ma'am, you were in court today when Detective Bronstein testified, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
You remember when Detective Bronstein said that your fingers and your fingerprints alone were on that gun, correct?
Yeah, I do remember that.
You didn't see Jimmy wearing any gloves during this weekend, did you?
No, I didn't.
Didn't see him take out any sanitizing stuff and spray down your gun, did you?
No, I didn't.
Yet it's your claim today that Jimmy was handling that gun during the days leading up to this murder, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I had just seen him kind of messing with it a couple times. He didn't try and shoot anything.
I'm not asking whether you're trying to shoot anything. I'm asking if it's your testimony, his hands were on it, and that's your testimony, right?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about Jimmy. You said as well to Miss Phillips that you found out Jimmy was going to go down there, and that's why you went on this trip with him. Is that correct?
No, that wasn't why I went on the trip. I wanted to get away, and when I found out that that's where Jimmy was headed, I just asked if I could go with him.
Well, man, that's a little different than what you told Detective Bronstein, isn't it?
I don't think so.
What you told Detective Bronstein when you were first interrogated was that you wanted to get out of town and you went to Jimmy, right?
Yeah, I did. I went to him and I was talking to him about the situation, and he mentioned that he was going down south for a couple days, so I asked if I could tag along.
Right, and you said you wanted to go down there to see a film festival, right?
Yeah.
What you didn't tell Detective Bronstein in your entire interrogation was that Jimmy was the one who wanted to go to New Orleans in the first place, correct?
Well, I mean, he was going down there, but I was tagging along. It was my idea for me to go.
Ma'am, I'm not asking about whether it was your idea. I'm asking about what you told Detective Bronstein. And you didn't tell Detective Bronstein it was Jimmy's idea to go to New Orleans, correct?
Well, it wasn't his idea to go to New Orleans, but
Ma'am, you didn't tell Detective Bronstein he was already going down south, correct?
no, I didn't. I didn't know I was supposed to tell Detective Bronstein about that.
You also didn't mention anything about Jimmy using drugs, did you?
No, I didn't. Detective Bronstein never asked me about that.
Ma'am, that's a no you didn't tell Detective Bronstein about, this drug use.
No, I didn't.
You told Miss Phillips about some hand signals you saw people giving Jimmy in the store and in the car. You didn't mention those to Detective Bronstein either, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't know I was supposed to. I didn't know that it was connected to anything.
So that's a no, you didn't tell those things to Detective Bronstein.
No, I didn't know that I was supposed to.
And I want to talk about your background. Your parents pretty much paid for everything you ever needed, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Your parents work on Wall Street,
Yeah, they do.
paid for credit cards.
Yes.
debit cards,
Yes, sir.
college.
Yeah.
But all of that changed in December of 2019. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, they did. They cut me off.
Right. They canceled all those things we just talked about: credit cards, debit cards, stuff like that. Right.
They did, yeah.
They cut you off completely.
Yeah, we had gotten into a fight, and that's how they reacted.
And you'd gotten into fights with your parents before about your future or about school, hadn't you?
Yeah, I had.
But this time, you thought they had finally cut you off for good, didn't you?
Yeah, I think they really had just had enough of me.
You had no idea what to do, right?
No, not really.
So let's talk about what you did. You decided to leave town and head to New Orleans, didn't you?
Yeah,
You took your parents' car.
I did.
You offered to pay for everything to your friend Jimmy.
I did, yeah.
And even though you had no idea what to do, you were planning to go to bars.
Well, I mean, we just decided that we were going to figure everything out once we got there.
Well, man, what you told Detective Bronstein was that you planned to go to bars, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was going down there just so I could forget about the whole situation. So me and Jimmy decided we were just going to figure out how to pay for everything before we got down there, when we got down there.
Ma'am, just to be clear, when you left home, you didn't really have a plan for how to pay for all this, right?
No, I didn't. We were going to
But you
figure it
did
out.
plan to go to bars.
Yeah.
See the filmmaking scene.
Yeah.
And you were planning to do all of that after you'd been cut off for good by your parents. True?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about what else you did. You've got a cell phone, don't you?
I do, yeah.
On that cell phone, you searched some things up, didn't you?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we'll be displaying a copy of Exhibit 21.
Go ahead.
There it is, Your Honor. Ma'am, this looks like your internet search history, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
You remember Detective Bronstein asking you about this, don't you?
Yeah.
You remember admitting to searching these things, right?
Yeah, I told him this was my search history, but I didn't search these things. Jimmy did.
Ma'am, it's your testimony that Jimmy took your phone and searched all of these things. Isn't that true?
Well, yeah, I was driving. I couldn't search these things.
Well, before we talk about Jimmy, let's talk about what's searched. It says, does Alabama have the death penalty?
Yeah, does Alabama have the death penalty, Alabama crime sentences, how to survive in Alabama prison, and Alabama laws?
Right, ma'am. And let's be clear, Detective Bronstein, she showed you this document, right?
Yeah, she did.
Do you remember what she asked you?
Not specifically. I think she might have asked me if this was my search history.
Well, let me help you out, ma'am. She asked you, would you like to explain this? Do you remember her saying that?
I don't specifically remember her saying that, but I'm sure you're right.
Ma'am, when she asked you if you want to explain this, you didn't say Jimmy took your phone, did you?
No, I didn't.
You said, I know this probably doesn't look good, but I swear it was a mistake. It was just a can of tuna. Those were your words, right?
I didn't say it like that, but yeah, that is what I told her. I mean, here, let me tell you what happened. So we're in the car and Jimmy.
Ma'am, you'll have a chance to explain what happened on redirect examination. But for the moment, I'm going to need you to answer my question. Those were your words to Detective Bronstein, correct?
That is what I told Detective Bronstein.
What you didn't say to Detective Bronstein was, I was driving and Jimmy had my phone, correct?
No, I never mentioned that.
Let's talk a little bit more about Jimmy. You didn't see Jimmy shoot Jamie Mills, did you?
No, I didn't.
You never saw Jimmy with your gun?
I mean, I saw him messing with it, but.
Right, ma'am. On the day of the crime, you didn't see him with the gun at the store?
No, not on the day of the crime at the store.
Let's go through the timeline here. You were trying to find your wallet in your car.
Yeah.
Jimmy was inside.
Yes.
You went inside and told Jimmy you would need to steal some food, right?
Yeah, I told him that we didn't have any money, yeah.
Right? It was your idea to steal food, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Then you heard that loud bang.
After I walked out of the store, yeah,
Jimmy came outside.
he did.
He seemed totally fine, right?
Yeah, he did.
You didn't see anyone else run out of that store, did you?
No, I didn't.
You never saw anyone run to that car you claim was in the park, did you?
No, I didn't.
Nothing further at this time.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Albacore, my opposing counsel, Mr. Marks, asked you about your search history. Do you care to explain what happened there?
So, I had just shoplifted this can of tuna, and Jimmy, he thought it was funny that I had finally done something bad. And so, he was making fun of me about how I was going to go to prison for the rest of my life. And, so he searched up those things because he thought it was funny.
Mr. Marks also asked you about why you didn't tell Detective Bronstein about Jimmy's drug use. But did Detective Bronstein ever ask you about that?
No, she never did.
Thank you, Ms. Albacore. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Marks, anything else for the defendant?
We do have a recross, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Ms. Albacore, let's talk about this drug problem. On direct examination, you told Miss Phillips, I regret ever going with the gun, right?
Yeah, I did.
You were frustrated with Jim.
I was more so just upset that for my friend.
But you told Detective Bronstein he was your best friend, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're still friends. It's just really upsetting.
And what you didn't tell Detective Bronstein was you overheard Jimmy talking about a drug deal, did you?
No, I didn't want to get Jimmy in trouble.
What you didn't tell Detective Bronstein was that Jimmy searched those things on your phone, correct?
No, I mean, she never asked me about that.
Ma'am, she asked you to explain that search history, correct?
She did, and I told her that I knew it didn't look great, and then she just moved on.
Ma'am, what you said actually was, I know this probably doesn't look good, but I swear it was a mistake. It was just a can of tuna. Were those your words, ma'am?
Yeah, I told her all I did was just steal a can of tuna. And then she moved on.
Those were your words?
Yeah, they were.
Nothing further.
Thank you very much. I'm assuming there's no redirect. The witness may step down. Defense, please call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Leslie Vita to the stand.
All right, now let me just make sure my speaker is turned on here. Oh, well, it looks like I just left the meeting. Oh, there I am.
We can hear you, Dr. Vita.
Oh, good.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, and I'll wish you good luck.
Could you please introduce yourself?
How you doing? My name is Vita.
And what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a forensics investigator, you see. I specialize in conducting investigations that involve the principles of mechanics, engineering, and things of that nature.
Now, what is your connection to this case?
Oh, the lead defense attorney is actually my fiance. Now, I didn't want to get onto this Zoom.us here, and I even asked her if someone else could talk about my findings in my place, but she always get what she wants, and I'm talking about my findings here today.
Could you tell us about your educational background?
Sure. I got a master's degree in engineering from Fort M. Lincoln Center. And I also got a PhD in the forensic sciences from New York University. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And Dr. Vita, what sort of automotive experience do you have?
Well, my family has owned and operated an auto shop since before even I was around, if you can believe it. But I worked there as a mechanic for a large period of time. I did pretty much everything, all kinds of work there. But once I got my PhD, I decided I wanted to do something that wouldn't require me to stand up so long, if you know what I mean here. I'm sorry, I believe that. You may have cut out there a little bit. Could you say that again?
Of course, Dr. Vita. I just wanted to know about your your forensic background, if you could tell us about that.
Oh, sure. I have my forensic consulting business, of course, but I also teach courses at Brooklyn College as well.
And what classes do you teach there?
Well, like I said, my specialty is in forensic mechanics. I got classes that cover general forensics, but my most popular courses are on automotive forensics. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And for your testimony today, what facts and data did you rely upon?
Well, I reviewed Bronstein's report, and I looked at a lot of the exhibits as well. And some of the most important exhibits I looked at was a plaster cast made of the tire tracks found at the sack of sardines, a photograph of Miss Albacore's car, and a photograph of a 1963 Pontiac Tempest.
And what principles and methods did you use?
No, I used all of the standard methods in my field of work. And I paid extra close attention to detail during my analysis of the tire tracks. I measured the dimensions of the cast and compared those measurements to what you would expect to find on Miss Albacore's machine.
Now, did you reliably apply those principles and methods to the facts and data of this case?
Oh, yes, sir. I certainly did. That's right.
Now, you mentioned tire tracks earlier. What can you tell us about those?
Oh, tires of different brands and different sizes, they leave behind different tracks. Now, when you drive over a soft surface, maybe gravel or maybe dirt or mud or things like that, your car will leave an indented set of tracks behind it. The car sort of leaves behind its footprints, if you will.
And can you match those treads to a specific vehicle?
Yes, sir. We can take measurements of those tracks and compare those measurements to tire sizes, and we can figure out which type of cars were available with those size tires.
Now, are you familiar with Detective Bronstein's investigation into the tire tracks at the sack of sardines?
Yes, sir, I certainly am. And, as I was reading through Miss Bronstein's report, it seems to me that she doesn't quite know how to properly conduct a tire tread analysis. I noticed multiple mistakes in there as I was reading through it.
Could you explain?
Yeah, I sure can. For one, Miss Bronstein only looked at the pattern of the tire tracks. Now, tires of different brands but of the same size will still leave behind different patterns. So you can only learn so much by examining the pattern. Now, Miss Bronstein, she never took any measurements of the tracks at all.
Did you take any measurements?
Oh, of course I did. Yes, yes, sir. The cast showed that the tracks that were found at the sack of sardines had a width of 180 millimeters and a groove depth of 0.5 millimeters. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And how do those compare to Miss Albacore's car?
Oh, well, they simply don't match. Miss Albacore, she drives a classic car. She drives a 1964 Buick Skylark. Now, the tires you'd expect to find on that type of car have a tire width of 192 millimeters and a groove depth of 0.9 millimeters.
So if a 1964 Buick Skylark didn't leave those tracks, then what car could have?
Taking into account the measurements of those tracks and the car that was reportedly left those tracks, the only car that would match the description yet leave those tracks would be a 1963 Pontiac Tempest.
Let the record reflect I'm screen sharing exhibits 3 and 8. Detective Bronstein, what car is in this first picture here?
Oh, that would be a 1963 Pontiac Tempest convertible right there.
And what about the second?
Oh, now that is Miss Albacore's 1964 Buick Skylark.
Now, Detective Bronstein, could you tell us specifically how these cars are similar?
Well, both of these cars were actually both built and owned by General Motors. They are based off the same platform. They use the same blueprints, the same parts, and they were also both offered in the same shade of mint green as Miss Albacore's machine.
Thank you, Dr. Vita. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Ms. Bristol, your witness.
Good evening, Dr. Vita. My name is Audrey Bristol, and I'm just going to be asking you some questions on behalf of the state today.
Yes, ma'am.
You aren't being paid for your testimony today, are you?
No, ma'am, I am not.
Exactly. You're here to testify as a personal favor, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right. And I hassled with my fiance. I tried to get someone else to present my research in my place, but if she wants something, she's gonna get it, if you know what I mean.
Exactly, sir. Your fiance is the lead defense attorney, isn't that true?
Yes, ma'am.
And as you said, if she wants something, you're gonna make sure she gets it, right?
Well, I'm not gonna make sure she's gonna make sure she gets it. You know what I'm saying?
All right, well, with that in mind, let's talk about your investigation. Detective, you'd agree with an investigation, it's important to be thorough, right?
Oh, most certainly. And I spent a long time analyzing this evidence that I was provided with.
Important to look into all relevant evidence.
Yes, ma'am.
Conduct all relevant tests.
Oh, of course.
And review all relevant documents and testimony.
Oh, most certainly. Everything we can get.
And that's all so you can reach an accurate conclusion at the end of an investigation. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
And doctor, you'd agree that an expert conclusion is only as good as the evidence it relies on. True?
Well, it depends on who's conducting the research, I would say.
Exactly. If you have bad research, then you'll have bad conclusions as well, right?
And also, if you have a bad researcher, then, well, God help everybody.
Exactly. And you also cannot form an opinion on what you simply didn't review.
Yeah, that's right.
And doctor, you never reviewed the gun acquired from the crime scene, did you?
I was not able to
Objection,
do that.
Your Honor, relevance. May I be heard?
Yes.
Your Honor, Dr. Vita's testimony was strictly limited to tire tracks found at the sack of sardines. He didn't provide any testimony about a gun. Therefore, asking this witness if he reviewed a gun and coming to his conclusion, that has no relevance in determining his testimony today.
Ms. Bristol, what's the relevance?
Your Honor, this goes to the scope of the witness's conclusions and what he was shown by defense counsel. Certainly, the limits of his testimony are relevant. As he said, he had a PhD in forensics.
Okay, I think a few questions about what the doctor did and didn't review is perfectly appropriate. We're not going to get too far into ballistics, right?
No, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, ma'am, if you would.
And you never reviewed the gun acquired from the crime scene, did you?
Oh, no, ma'am. There wouldn't have been anything that I could have figured out from that. And
You
besides,
didn't.
Miss Bronstein did review on it and gave me all the details.
But you also didn't review the 22 caliber bullet left at the crime scene, did you?
No, ma'am, but Miss Bronstein did, and I reviewed all of her research very thoroughly.
In fact, doctor, you also never spoke to the defendant, did you?
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to, and I don't know if there was any legal reason to it, but thankfully I never had to.
Exactly, doctor. The defense counsel, your fiance, refused to let you speak to the defendant. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right. And you know, she's kind of huffy. I kept asking her what legal properties are keeping that from happening, but well, the good news is I never had to speak to her about anything, so we can be thankful about that.
So that's a yes. Your fiance refused to let you speak to the defendant.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, now, Dr. Vita, let's instead talk about what you did choose to review. You looked into tire tread impressions and gunshot residue left at the crime scene, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
And let's start with those tire tracks. You'd agree that when it comes to tire tracks and their measurements, there's usually about a 5 to 15 millimeter margin of error. True?
Yeah, generally speaking, that's true.
And you said on direct examination that the width of the tires from the defendant's car is usually about 192 millimeters, right?
Yeah, most of the time, that's what you would expect to see.
And the treads found at the crime scene indicated they were left by a car with 180 millimeter tread. True?
Yeah, that's right. There was a whole 12 millimeter difference between the two.
But doctor, does that 12 millimeter difference fall within that 5 to 15 millimeter margin of error?
It certainly does, but it's on the extreme side. You would not expect to see measurements like that being left behind by a 1964 Skylark, ma'am.
But doctor, you would agree that 12 millimeter difference does fall within the margin of error you provided, right?
Well, of the 15, yes, but it's much over the 5.
Is that a yes?
Well, it depends on the tire, but yes, ma'am, it falls, underneath the 15, but the 5 millimeter difference, it's way more than that.
Sir, is that 12 millimeter difference within the margin of error?
Well, it depends on the one you're using. It's not inside the margin of error if you're using the 5 millimeter difference.
Sir, the margin of error you provided is from 5 to 15 millimeters, right?
That's right.
And you would say 12 is in between 5 and 15, right?
That's right.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bristol. Mr. Robertson?
I have no redirect, Your Honor, and at this time, the defense rests.
Great. I'll suggest a 3-minute break for closing argument. Is that sufficient for both parties?
That's amenable to the defense, Your Honor.
Mr. Marks?
Apologies, Your Honor, you cut out there for a minute. Could you repeat yourself?
I'm proposing a 3-minute break so both parties can prepare for closing argument.
That's perfect with us. Thank you.
Great. We'll see you in 3. All right, looks like we have everybody back. We'll turn to the prosecution closing argument.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
May.
Thank you. Bernstein, Mr. Robertson, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, may it please the court. No one is saying the defendant hated Jamie Willis. She didn't. No one is saying the defendant had a violent past. She didn't. And no one is saying the defendant walked into that store with the desire to kill. She didn't. And that's what makes this case so tragic. Because the defendant stopped seeing Jamie as a human being and started seeing him as an obstacle, a problem that needed to be resolved. She couldn't pay. So Jamie paid the price. Now, we couldn't just say that today. We had to bring you proof. We had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that one, the defendant used force to steal from Jamie, and two, that the defendant knowingly killed Jamie Willis. Now, today it's up to you to determine whether or not we've met our burden, and to reach that determination, all you have to do is focus on those three facts my co-counsel, Ms. Bristol, told you at the beginning of today's trial: the funds, the frenzy, and the forensic. Now, you learned on cross-examination today that the defendant's parents paid for everything she did. But when they cut the defendant off, she had no idea what to do. The defendant could no longer pay. So she had to come up with a plan. That's when the frenzy began. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the defendant tried it. She was going to pay for all of this with the money she had left in her wallet, spare change. But that's not consistent with the evidence. I mean, think about it. The defendant was going to drive to New Orleans, stay in a hotel, go to filmmaking events, bars, parties, and she planned to pay for all of it for 2 people. Because the defendant had a simple plan. She was going to rob that convenience store. She couldn't pay. So someone else was going to pay the price. But when Jamie Willis came out from behind that cash register, the defendant got scared. She held up her gun, and when Jamie wouldn't back down, she fired. She murdered in his own state. And we know that because of the overwhelming forensic evidence left at the scene. I mean, let's start with the murder. The police find a .22 caliber Smith 1911 handgun right by the street. Defendant admits it's her gun. The defendant admits she threw it away because she was concerned about what the police would think. Members of the jury, that's not what an innocent person would do after grabbing a can of tuna from the store. Now, today they tried to say Jimmy was messing around with that gun, but we know that that doesn't make sense because his fingerprints weren't on it. You also heard from Dr. Vita, and he told you a lot of numbers about tires, about cars, and about all those things. But there's really only one number you need to take away from Dr. Vita, and that number is $0. $0, that's what Dr. Vita was paid. He's here because, as he would tell you, if his fiance wants something, she'll get it. She wants to win this case, and he's going to get it. The defendant couldn't pay. So Jamie paid the price. Now, today the defendant offered you a story about what happened. And it's true. They're allowed to do that. They don't have a burden. They don't have to prove that story. But when they tell you a story, you're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to ask whether it makes sense. So first, ladies and gentlemen, they were seen fleeing the crime scene by Sam Tifton, a witness with no motive to misrepresent. She told you she didn't see anyone else. She didn't see any other cars. She saw the defendant and Jimmy. Let's talk about Jimmy. They want you to believe there was a drug deal going down when we heard no evidence of any use of drugs from anyone other than the person on trial today. There was no drug deal, ladies and gentlemen, because if there was, if this defendant was really concerned about a drug deal going on at the Sack of Sardines when she was being questioned about her actions there by a police officer, then why didn't she mention it? She didn't mention it because she made it up. She didn't mention him using the gun because he didn't. She lied to you, ladies and gentlemen. The defendant couldn't pay. Jamie Willis paid the price. Find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Defense?
Yes, Your Honor, permission to proceed.
You may.
Alex Albacore was in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong man. Mr. Marks wants you to ignore desperate, drug-addicted Jimmy Starkis. And if you do that, it'll be Alex who pays the price. Because the truth is, Alex was just in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong man. Members of the jury, as the defense, we bear no burden of proof. That burden rests solely with the prosecution. Now, there are two charges here. Now, in a moment, you'll have to fill these out. These are the jury instructions. For count 1, robbery, the state must prove that the defendant took money while armed with a deadly weapon. For count 2, they must prove that the defendant took money, killed Mr. Willis purposely and knowingly. And they have to prove each and every one of these elements to you beyond a reasonable doubt. But why? Why do we hold the government to the highest legal burden in our judicial system? It's because they're asking you to make a decision that will affect Miss Albacore for the rest of her life. They can't ask you to guess. They have to prove it to you. And if there is a single reasonable doubt in your mind, if there are any other reasonable explanations, then you must find Miss Albacore not guilty. Now, at the outset, it's important to note that the prosecution's case depends on this gun being the murder weapon. It depends on the shooter firing the gun, running out of the store, throwing it in the dumpster, and then fleeing the scene, right? But they've got a problem. That doesn't even appear to be possible. Why? Because that is not what Sam Tifton saw. She saw the suspects running from the store straight to the car, not from the store to the dumpster to the car. And not only that, but Detective Bronstein developed a drawing of the GSR trail. And what do you notice? It goes straight from the store to the car, not from the store to the dumpster to the car. So how could that gun even have been the murder weapon? Now, it still leaves us with the question, what happened inside the store? And unfortunately, Alex can't tell you because she doesn't know. She wasn't in the store at the time. To answer the question of what happened in the store, we have to look at who was in the store. Now, on the one hand, you have drug dealers operating out of a 1963 Pontiac Tempest. Now, Sam Tifton saw their car several times, and Jamie Willis saw them twice. One on the day before his death, it made him nervous. And Alex, she saw their car on January 4th and saw one of them in the store right before Jamie Willis was killed. I want you to remember what Sam Tifton told you today when we showed her that 911 call. She said she saw someone running out the back door after Alex Albacore had left. And not only that, but the tire tracks prove that they were the ones fleeing the scene, not Alex. And on the other hand, we have desperate, drug-addicted Jimmy Starkis. And we know he was in the store because Alex heard the gunshot and then saw Jimmy running out. So we have this deadly mix. On the one hand, dangerous drug dealers, on the other, desperate, drug-addicted Jimmy Starkis. A man who needed money he didn't have to pay the dealers he couldn't afford to let down. And we can look not only at who was in the store, but what happened afterwards. Now, let me ask you a question. Who moved the body? Let me repeat that. Who moved the body? When Sam Tifton called 911, the body was in the back of the store. But was at the front register. But when Detective Bronstein got there, the body was then in the back of the store. Why? Why would someone do that? And who? Could it have been that the person Sam Tifton saw running out the back door moved the body? How does that not raise reasonable doubt? And now Mr. Marks addressed something on his closing. He said that if Jimmy really had touched the gun, why didn't we find any fingerprints? I want you to remember what you actually saw from the defendant when she told you she herself touched the gun and threw it away. There was only one of her fingerprints on that gun. Now, if they're claiming that the defendant took that gun and pointed at Jamie Willis and tried to shoot him, why aren't there more fingerprints on that gun? Mr. Marks also said that that we didn't pay Ethan that we didn't pay Dr. Vita anything. But the number to point out is 0. I want you to think about it. If we had paid Dr. Vita, if we had paid him at the normal rate of the expert, that's the number he would be telling you to focus on. In words of the jury, Alex sympathizes with Mr. Willis, but Alex did not kill him. Alex was just in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong man. And in our system of justice, only you can set things right. Find Miss Albacore not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. Marks, rebuttal argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
You can
Judge
proceed.
Thank you. Judge Bernstein, Mr. Robertson, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong man. Let's take that at its word. Well, if you believe everything Mr. Robertson just told you, well, that makes this defendant the unluckiest person on the planet. She robs a store moments before a murder. She throws away a gun that matched the bullet used in the murder. She gets gunshot residue on her clothes, on her car, and the killer just so happens to drive a specific 50-year-old mint green convertible that somehow was invisible to the only eyewitness there, Sam Tifton. And also, these dangerous drug dealers we keep hearing about decide not to shoot Jimmy, who can't pay, but fire one gunshot and one gunshot alone into the store clerk's head. Ladies and gentlemen, that's absurd. Nobody is that unlucky. The defendant couldn't pay. So Jamie paid the price. Today, we're asking you to make the defendant pay. Find her guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. I'll ask all of our jurors to please submit their ballots. Once you've submitted your ballot, if you turn on your camera so we can give some feedback to these outstanding competitors. Ian, who won all those awards behind you?
My students, actually. This is because they did a good job, so it looks good behind me.
Nice. Congratulations.
Congrats to them.
And with that, we have our last judge having submitted her ballot. We are all set. If I can have the competitors turn on their screens, we would love to congratulate you, give you some feedback. Before we give you any feedback, though, let's give them a round of applause. What a remarkable performance. Congratulations. So I know right now our tournament coordinators are tabulating the ballots, and they're going to have results for you soon. In the meantime, though, we'd love to tell you our favorite moments in the round. So I'll ask each of our judges to tell us your favorite moment from each team's performance. And I'll just go clockwise around my screen, starting with Ian Lambert.
Great job, everyone. That was outstanding. First, to highlight the prosecution. To Mr. Marks, I thought on your cross-examination, you did an outstanding job of highlighting the small inventions that we often see in mock trial in a way that built up for me and really was just a masterclass in how it should be done in both high school and AMTA. That was phenomenal. For the defense, I think you got to go big or go home. And I love the defense expert, especially in the context of this case. You know, my cousin Vinny parallel, the idea of someone who starts off seeming like, well, I don't know about all of this stuff, but he's incredibly competent in his field, was just so on brand. I really, really appreciated it. Great job to both teams. Phenomenal work.
Sue?
Thank you.
Yes, great job for both teams. I really enjoyed the trial. It was an outstanding round. It's hard to pick one moment from each team. I very much appreciate what Ian said. I would agree that on the prosecution, I think I most appreciated your responsiveness in terms of what the defense case was, bringing in extra questions that appeared at least on your crosses and even on your directs to address the theory of the defense team. On the defense, lots of great moments. I think probably one of my favorites was the use of the map exhibit to show where the two cars were and just to like raise questions in the mind of the jury about what really did happen, where were the cars, who really might have done this.
Thank you. Amanda?
Yeah, fantastic round. Just truly impressive that this is the caliber that you all are at your age. It's awesome to see. It's hard to pick one moment from each team. For the prosecution, not to have any recency bias, but the rebuttal was just dynamite. No one is that unlucky. It was just fantastic. The delivery was good. It was short and sweet, but very effective. And then for the defense, this maybe is sort of cheating because it's not really one moment, but just the who moved the body, it came up as sort of a finishing line during the cross. It came up again on closing. I just thought that was very effective because it sort of raises the exact doubt that you need, that this is a much more complicated story than the prosecution is trying to tell.
Coach Leapart?
I agree that there were a lot of great moments and you guys were amazing. For me, I love openings, and your openings told me that this was going to be a very close round. It was clear, your theme was clear, where you were headed was clear, your roadmap was clear. So that was my favorite, to start at such a high level. I knew it was going to be a tight round, so I really enjoyed your openings.
Eric?
Really good job. I didn't compete in high school mock trial, but if this is what high school mock trial looks like, man, high school mock trial is really good. You guys were excellent. Okay, favorite moments. So for the prosecution, I'll say I really thought the defendant cross was effective. Just a good use of like contrasting. It's what Ian said, basically. Good use of contrasting, the story given in trial with what was said to the detective in the deposition. Like, that's exactly how it should be done. For the defense, I was expecting not to like the defense expert when it started. It felt like it was going to be kind of cartoonish, but it was very effective. That kind of character ameliorated the bias pretty well, and it's very entertaining. Good job.
And our reigning college national champion, Cindy Gaskins.
Yes, great job, everybody. For the defense, my favorite moment was your opening. I thought it was super engaging and dynamic, and I enjoyed it a lot. And for the prosecution, Ethan, I am so excited about you. On your defendant cross, when she goes, okay, well, let me explain. And you go, ma'am, you can explain on redirect. I was done for. You'll see in my comments, I just stopped commenting at that point. I was like, mic drop. It was incredible. Great job, everybody. It was so much fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I was blown away. I mean, I was joking with the judges in our breakout room. I know you guys get the compliment all the time. You're better than some real lawyers we see sometimes. I'll give you what I think of as a higher compliment. You're better than a lot of college and law school competitors that I see all the time. I mean, you would not be out of your league at all competing at a national level competition in college, and I hope soon you all will be. I think my favorite moment from the prosecution was, I'll steal Amanda's line, I'm cheating a little bit. I think that it was the the consistent, relentless attack on the defense theory. From the moment they opened on alternate suspect, you guys just went after the alternate suspect theory, and you didn't make it an afterthought. You basically said, if that's not reasonable, we win. And I thought that was really smart. On defense, I just love the witnesses. Luke, is that your real mustache? I'm just kidding.
No, sir, no.
Okay, well, you had me fooled. Catherine, I think that your performance was my favorite witness performance of the round in this sense. You had a really tough cross-examination, and everybody has rightly praised Ethan's cross of the defendant. I thought you did a great job of remaining credible and in character under a withering set of questions. So really great job. Hopefully we have given you feedback for sufficient time that there's Rhea, perfect. We will turn it over to her. And I'll just say on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for inviting us to judge. I knew the competition would be great, but I couldn't have imagined the competitors would be this good. So thanks to all of you and to your coaches, and we'll turn it over to our wonderful tournament host.
Thank you so much, Justin, and to all of our other judges as well. Wow, what a phenomenal round. I do not envy the judges who had what I'm sure was the incredibly difficult task of scoring both teams in this round. Now, before we get to the results, I want to take a moment to recognize the phenomenal competitors from each school, both the students who competed in this round that we've all been watching and throughout the entire weekend. So if everyone could do me a favor and turn your cameras off, I'm going to ask some students to come on screen. When I do, if you could turn on your cameras, that would be fantastic. So first, the prosecution. After 4 rounds, this team was the champion of their division. They're joining us all the way from Ohio. So if all the competitors from Indian Hill High School could please come on screen, I want to congratulate each one of you. So there were 5 students who competed on this team and brought Indian Hill to the championship round. Those students were Ethan Marks, Tacey Hutton, Audrey Bristol, Brooke Youngblood, and Sydney Poppinger. Congratulations to you all on an incredible performance this weekend and a very, very well-deserved place in our final round.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who judged this weekend. It was a lot of fun.
Now next, the defense. After 4 long rounds, this team was the champion of their division. They're joining us all the way from North Carolina. And if all the competitors from Central Carolina homeschoolers could please come on screen, I want to congratulate each one of you as well. There were 6 students who competed on this team and brought them all the way here to our championship final round. Those students were Elena Phillips, Peyton Robertson, Gwen Ellis, Catherine Honeycutt, Caleb Phillips, and Luke Walker. Congratulations to you all on a fantastic performance and making it all the way to the final round as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Now there's a couple more people that we want to recognize as well. If everyone could go ahead and turn their cameras off. We want to recognize the amazing coaches who dedicated their time to bring you all here today. So if we could get the coaches from both teams on screen. I know that I can think back to the days when I was a competitor in high school. I know how influential my coaches were, not only on my success as a competitor, but also in helping me grow as a person and leading me where I am today. I'm sure that your students feel the exact same way. And so please, students, feel free to unmute and cheer on your amazing coaches.
Yeah.
And last but not least, we would like to thank our incredible judges for taking the time out of their Sunday night to judge our championship round. Justin Bernstein, Sue Johnson, Amanda Mundell, Eric Reutman, Ian Lampert, Sydney Gaskins, and Delois Leapart. You all are phenomenal, and I truly cannot think of better competitors, contributors to the mock trial community. Thank you all so much for being here and also for your incredible dedication to this activity over the years. Now, finally, if we could get all of our competitors on screen just one more time. I know you're all probably anxiously waiting. So without further ado, I'm very excited to announce our grand champion for the inaugural MockOn Tournament of Champions. Now, one of these teams is going to be shipped our grand champion trophy. It's a little bit heavy. Now, this was an incredibly close round. Every single ballot was just a few points apart, which really speaks to the immense talent of both of the competing teams here. Now, I'm absolutely thrilled to announce our inaugural grand champion for the 2021 MockOn Tournament of Champions, Indian Hill High School. Congratulations, Indian Hill.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you, Central Carolina.
Yeah, congratulations, guys.
We got to play you guys 3 years, or not 3 years, 3 times this year. Your B team, your A team, you guys are phenomenal. This was so much fun. And just to echo what has been said already, thank you so much to the judges and to Coach Rieger. You know, we just love you guys so much. So thank you.
It's been so fun getting to compete against such high competition, and it's been such an honor.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You guys are fantastic. Congrats to you as well.
Y'all are great. Congratulations, you guys. And thank you to everyone who was watching the final round. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to send these amazing teams and students your congratulations as well. Indian Hill, we will be sending your trophy soon. And I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your weekend. And hopefully we'll see you next year, whether we're online or in person. We're excited and we wish everyone the best of luck with your season.